Welcome to the Good Divorce Show, where we can help you learn how to navigate the journey of divorce with less conflict, less debt, and equip you not to just get divorced, but also learn how to be divorced. Your host, certified divorce coach Karen McNenny, shares her wealth of knowledge, gets advice from other relationship experts, and interviews couples who learn how to have a good divorce, so you can too. Now here's your host, Karen.
Well, hello, listeners. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am Karen McNenny, your good divorce coach, helping you find your way to your own good divorce. And today we got a lifer in here. She has been there, done that, as well as bringing just an extraordinary amount of what I'm going to call really life as well as research-based expertise today. Help me to welcome Beatty Cohan. She is a nationally recognized psychotherapist, sex therapist, and author of For Better, For Worse, Forever, Discover the Path to Lasting Love. Also, you can catch her on Ask Beatty. She is the advice columnist for Dan's papers in the Hamptons and Palm Beach. She is a national speaker, a national radio and television expert guest, and host of the weekly Ask Beatty show on the Progressive Radio Network. Beatty currently has a private practice in New York City and East Hampton, but the magic of technology brings her to all of us across the world today. Welcome to the Good Divorce Show, Beatty.
Oh, what a lovely introduction. It was wonderful to be with you, Karen.
Well, I want to dive right in to this been there, done that, you've lived it. Because one of the things that we really try to highlight on the Good Divorce Show is not only our experts, and we're going to get to that because we know you've got expertise to share with us, but a bit of your own personal story, because you divorced in the 80s, you raised children together, you're on the other side of it, talking about it today. Can you give us a few of the stepping stones of the before, during, and after of your own divorce journey and why you would call it a good divorce?
Well, my daughter was 3.5 years old, and my then ex-husband and I, things were not working out as we had hoped. And ironically, and people should know, here I was, a psychotherapist, well-known psychotherapist. He was, and he is a psychiatrist. And as my late mom used to say, boy, if you two can't make it, who can? But, when I go back and I think about it, I wish that our communication and problem-solving skills had been better. But in any case, we made the decision that it was really time to move on. And we also made the decision, since we were both very, very hands-on, very involved in raising and loving our daughter, that we were going to do this well. We were going to do this well, and we were living, actually, I'm originally from Winnipeg, did my graduate and postgraduate work at McGill University in Montreal. And my ex-husband was from Toronto, and we were living in Calgary at the time. And circumstances were such, this was about 6 months to a year after we made the decision, I actually met somebody and moved to Providence, Rhode Island.
Oh, wow. Right.
Yes.
The new relationship or the new jobs that take us geographically away from the family center point.
Exactly. And did I do this too quickly? Of course, I hadn't written and done the research for my book. But that's another story that we can talk about.
We're going to come to that.
We will. And my ex-husband, of course, was going to move as well. So he got his visa and was able to get his medical license in Providence, Rhode Island. And it took about a year for him to get there permanently, but he visited on a regular basis. He was in Providence almost every month. He was on the phone with our daughter every day, and the cards would be coming in every day. So I was really, really happy. And of course, our daughter was really happy when he was finally, within the year, he was actually living permanently in Providence, Rhode Island. By that time, I had remarried. And about a year or so afterwards, he found an amazing woman and he got married.
Oh, wow.
It's really interesting that we were this foursome, everybody at Jordana's school, and people that we knew socially, they would look at this foursome and they could not believe that we were for real. And Ed's wife was really my closest friend. And I mean, we still, this is many, many years later. My daughter is 40. We divorced when she was 3.5. And we are in very, very constant, I mean, not every day, but we speak on a regular basis. And I am so proud, Karen, without sounding egotistical or narcissistic or anything like that, and how well the four of us navigated, which could have been a very, very, especially with the geography. I mean, had he not moved, it would have been really difficult. But that was never an option. And there was no court, there was no nothing. We split everything 50-50. That was the way we lived our lives. And it was truly, it was in the best interest of our daughter, but it was also in our best interest. And we celebrated holidays together. And sometimes maybe people thought maybe it was a bit much, but we did. And again, it was a wonderful, wonderful way to be able to take this journey, the four of us together, and to do it well. Now, were there some ups and downs? Of course, there were some ups and downs. And I, frankly, never got used to my daughter not being with me all the time. So we had this arrangement. You know, it's nice to be talking about this because I haven't talked about this publicly in this way, I don't think ever. But
Oh, well,
I'm happy to do it. I'm really happy to do it.
And you have a lot to be proud of,
Yeah.
and we shouldn't be shameful that we've had good divorces. We need to broadcast those stories.
Absolutely. So every Wednesday evening, she would sleep over at his house. He would pick her up from school. And every Sunday night, he would, pick her up. And every other weekend, they were together. And whenever else they wanted. So we went together, for school events and parent-teacher events. So there was a lot. And we didn't live that far from each other, which was great. In Providence, and so it was until he and I drove her when she finished high school, and she was going to NYU. She was going to dish for acting, and I'll never forget it. We were in the car from Providence, driving our baby to New York University, where she was going to be starting university. And so true, and it's continued, and it's something that if only people could find a way. And I know that this is not always possible. And collaborative divorce obviously is the ideal. When people are really wanting to make the decision, it's a conscious decision. We're going to do this well, or we're going to do this badly. And sometimes there are situations where it's not possible.
That's right.
Should not beat themselves up if they've tried, to do this well, and their partner, or for whatever reasons, they were not able to really get on the good divorce wagon.
Yes. And I think you make such a good point that it does take two. Just like
Yes.
marriage, we all contributed to the success of the marriage, and then the divergence of the marriage, and then what we choose to do after that. I often tell my clients, your marriage is ending, but if you share children, the relationship is not ending. You're renovating that relationship into something new that, as you're demonstrating, will last a lifetime. And through weddings and funerals and grandkids and graduations. Is there anything that you could point to as you reflect on this today that you and the father of your daughter were extra conscious of? Like, one thing I heard is you created flexibility in the parenting plan. I think people sometimes think that the parenting plan police are going to come around and see if you're watching the clock and what the days. And the truth is, there's no parenting plan police. that the best parenting plan is the one that goes in the drawer and you never have to refer to again, because you're
Exactly.
still co-parenting in this sort of fluid way. So can you
Right.
say a little bit more about that, what that looked like in your family?
Well, I mean, being mental health professionals, he being a psychiatrist and me being a psychotherapist, I mean, we were always very, very concerned about doing things that were in our daughter's well-being, emotionally, psychologically, relationally.
Mhm.
Uh, that was a priority for us. And so that if there were, issues that came up, and I'm really trying to think of, major issues, there weren't. I think maybe the biggest issue I had was sharing my daughter, and that she had two houses, and
Yes.
there were two rooms, and then there were going to be two sets of vacations,
Mm.
and that she wasn't going to be with me all the time. And I'm sure that Ed felt exactly the same way. I'm an only child, so and she's an only child. So
Mm.
I think a lot of only children, we have trouble sharing. And I think that that was one of the things emotionally, Karen, that I really had to work
Mm.
through. Because I remember, when he would pick her up or on the weekends that she wasn't with me, or when she was even away at camp, I missed her so much. And
Oh.
oftentimes, what I would actually do then, I'd get in the car and I would just go over to their house. And luckily, he had a wife and has a wife. He was accepting of all of this. And that was just luck, because I think sometimes I was probably a little intrusive, and sometimes maybe
Mm.
not intrusive. But we understood. And my husband, understood, and we did the best that we could, not perfectly. I don't want to paint the story as if were no problems at all, because that's
Mhm.
not true. uh, but I think of the four of us, I think I probably had the biggest problem and difficulty really letting go and sharing, and not having her with me 7 days and 7 nights a week.
And I think most of us who are divorced with children, I know in those early days when the house would clear out of all
Yeah.
the friends and the kids, the silence was deafening.
Right.
Just an
Right.
ache, and it takes a long time to adjust to that, and to know that you are missing a bedtime, you're missing a story, you're missing a little magical moment that happens after school.
Right.
And I try to remind people that the story is also long, and it isn't just from kindergarten to graduation, that there is this other chapter when our children become adults. And I know for me, as I became a parent, I certainly looked at my own parents with a bright new eye of
Yes.
gratitude and
Yes.
appreciation, and
Yes.
have the joy of continuing to see them regularly.
Yes. No, I still miss her. I still wish she was here every day. In fact, she and her husband, they moved from New York City to Hudson, which is about 2 hours out of New York City. So, I don't think I've ever quite gotten used to the fact that my baby, who then became a little girl, who then became an adult, and I certainly am very clear about the boundaries, and I don't overstep the boundaries, and I don't arrive as I used to arrive, when she was a lot younger. But look, I miss her. And of course, the childhood, the whole thing went by so quickly, which is why parents, when we're going through the divorce and post divorce, we really have to be mindful of living our lives in the best possible ways that are in everybody's best interest.
Mhm.
It's
And
not always.
people choose to hold on to the anger and the pain and the resentment,
Yes.
and it is a choose. And I'm not
Yeah. Of
saying that there wasn't hurt or wrongdoings
course.
or,
Right.
and that there's reasons to feel betrayal or bitter or resentment. But it really is up to us as to how long we want to hold on to that, and when we
Exactly.
want to set it down and just move on.
Exactly. And I mean, really, like a death. I mean, people go through many, many different stages. I mean, there's the shock and the anger and the depression and the bargaining, and you get to it, and not in any particular order, but
No. not
No,
sequential,
like
not
that.
predictable.
No,
I
no,
I share
no.
with my divorcing clients, we talk about those stages of grief because it is a death, but it's more
Yes.
like a ping pong ball in a shoebox. You're going to
Yeah.
bounce around and you don't know when, and that grief cycle is not linear. But it's also not forever. That hard, aching, painful place does not
Right.
last forever if you
Right.
can let the next chapter be written.
Right. Right. And I find, whether or not it's dealing with divorce or, other kinds of trauma, and divorce is a trauma.
Yes, it is.
There's a way, as a psychotherapist to help people emotionally deal with all of this. I mean, you can't just say, okay, it's time to move on. I mean, you really have to go through the different stages and feel the pain and the anger and the disappointments and the failure, and not beat ourselves up. So it's a process. It's a journey. It's an emotional journey,
Mm.
and people need to give themselves permission to go through this journey, and hopefully they have support, which is so important. If you're lucky, you have family and friends, and if need be, I'm always telling people to give themselves permission to reach out and ask for help, because we don't need to navigate the ups and downs of life,
Mhm.
whether it's divorce or anything else, on our own. It's a good thing. It's not a weakness, it's a strength.
No. And I would suggest to our listeners who are tuned in today that you might even want to pass this particular episode on to that community of friends and family, because sometimes they don't know what to
Yeah,
do with us. They don't know how to reach out. And
right.
and I really, you know, say to those folks, when we think that there's a shame or pain, like you get divorced, if I had been diagnosed with cancer or my mother had died, people would have been showing up with a casserole every other day.
Right.
Oh my gosh. As soon as I
Yes.
was going through divorce, it was like, it's too awkward. We don't know how to support her. We just
Right.
show up.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think what happens oftentimes too is that when you are close to somebody and they're going through a divorce, and if you're married, it triggers something in other people. There's their own worry, there's their own perhaps examination of
Yes.
their own relationship, because as we all know, nobody ever knows what goes on behind closed doors. People can present as the golden couple, and
Mhm.
there can be terrible things that are going on. So yes, and I think that's really true, that a lot of people, they don't know how to respond,
Yep.
and then they feel the need to take sides, and then they feel the need to be righteous, and
Mhm.
all of this, of course, is completely unhelpful.
And if you're the person going through the divorce, I encourage you to educate your community
Right.
and be explicit and say you don't need to pick sides. If you're going to pick a
Right.
side, please just pick the side of our children. We're all
Yeah.
on that side.
Exactly.
And our personal marriage that ended in divorce, nobody needs to get into that. Nobody needs to broadcast it. Let's
Right.
all get on the side of the children and support both parents, because that is in the best interest of the child.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. Oh, you're completely
Well,
right.
we are chatting today with wise woman Beatty Cohan, a nationally recognized psychotherapist, sex therapist, and author. And not only has Beatty walked through her own divorce journey, but you come with great tips for those of us moving from divorce into next relationships. So when we get back from our break, we're going to hear some do's and don'ts and what we learned along the way, so that some of the decisions that we made in our first partnerships don't necessarily carry on to the next. I'm your good divorce coach, Karen McNenny. Stay tuned.
Are you thinking about getting divorced? Before you call a lawyer, call the Good Divorce Coach, Karen McNenny, a certified divorce counselor, co-parenting specialist, and mediator. Karen's signature Good Divorce experience will guide you through your divorce journey, from the day you make that difficult decision to the day the decree is signed, all for a predictable fee. The Good Divorce Coach will teach you and your partner how to get divorced and be divorced with less conflict and less debt. Visit thegooddivorcecoach.com to get in touch with Karen.
Now, back to the show with Karen.
Thanks for staying with us, listeners. Back here at the Good Divorce Show, chatting today with Beatty Cohan. Delightful conversation, not only about Beatty's personal journey as a survivor of divorce, a good divorce, but also a nationally recognized psychotherapist, sex therapist, and author of a book I want to dive into titled For Better, For Worse, Forever, Discover the Path to Lasting Love, which of course is ironic because you are a woman of divorce, which means you learned along the way. But before we get into the lessons learned and the new relationships, I've been asked the question, why would you want to be a divorce coach, Karen? Why would you want to be a therapist and spend all this time hearing about people's problems? So I'm going to ask you that same question, Ms. Cohan, how it is that you came to this work and what has kept you really deeply involved for 35 years.
Okay, here's the story. I have my parents to thank for this. When I was about 10 years old, growing up in Winnipeg, Canada, for my birthday, and this is a true story, they bought me a white transistor radio. And people might wonder, so what does that have to do with anything? Now, somehow, I found a show that aired at midnight every single Sunday night called Ask the Pastor. And it was a call-in counseling radio talk show. And people would call in and they would, talk about their marriage problems and they would talk about their depression. And I was fascinated. I mean, I'm a kid. And I had the transistor radio under my pillow because my mom would have killed me.
Because you were up at midnight listening to the radio.
I was, and I listened to the show for many, many years, and I was so excited when I was older. I actually met the pastor who was hosting the show. And what's so interesting, I was one of these people, and I was a terrible student. My mom was a teacher, and I had to go to summer school every summer for math and science. I had no interest in any of that. Only in people and the dynamics and the interactions. And I would observe people, that would come to our house. So I never had to make a decision about what I was going to do, helping people. And my dad was the father of the neighborhood, and all kids would congregate in our yard, and he would take us for ice cream, and he would take us to the park. So that there was this affect, this behavior really in our family of helping other people. So it was very interesting because with terrible grades, how was I going to even get to university? And in grade 12, again, I'll never forget this. My guidance counselor said, listen, I think you'd be better off not going to university. And I was like, oh my goodness. And I came home and I told my parents and they thought that was nonsense. So needless to say, in my undergraduate years, it was okay. But then I got into the master's program at McGill University in Montreal, which is really the Harvard of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, I did soared. There was never a question of not doing this. And coming from Winnipeg, coming from an Orthodox Jewish family, I mean, my life has opened up in ways that I could never have imagined. I mean, I've treated people who've killed. I've treated people from every socioeconomic, background, every race, every sexual orientation. I mean, this is a gift that I have been given to have a life that, had I stayed in Winnipeg and had I never gone to university and had I never done this, I mean, my life would have been completely different. And I see people who have very, very serious psychiatric problems. Mm-hmm. I see people who have relationship issues. I see people who need tune-ups. I see people who've had serious trauma. I mean, I've treated hundreds and hundreds of survivors of early child sexual abuse, domestic violence. So, and today, and then I branched out when my book came out, that was the beginning of all the local and national media, the television and radio. And as I was saying to you on the break, when I was in graduate school, I couldn't even say my name. I didn't have that kind of confidence to be able, I could never have done this, like ever, 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 ever. And I have to say that the Dale Carnegie course that I took in Montreal, it changed my life. It really did. But no, I mean, I love what I do as a psychotherapist and a sex therapist. And, all of this, the media and my columns and writings, I mean, I see myself as an educator. And I always say if there's some little thing, some little article, some little comment, some little something that can really, give people an aha moment where they realize that they have the capacity, they have the power to be able to change the things in their lives that are not working. It's all worth it,
Well, let's dive into those ahas so that our listeners can harness some of that goodness you're talking about. And you've mentioned the books and the research, which has really, led you down this path of learning. And just wondering a few things that maybe you have discovered that we all need to learn and do so that we don't make mistakes in love again, or how we move from our marriages through divorce to new marriages, such as you and your first husband have both found, who are these miracle partners who you all hang out as a quartet. So let's start with the three things that we all need to learn and do so that we never make a mistake in love again.
Okay, let me just say that before I got to the three things, I did, and this was with my husband, I did research with 450 people in the Boston, Providence, and Connecticut area and came up with a 10-step formula that teaches people how to assess who's right for you and who's wrong for you before committing to any serious relationship. This culminated in my book and in everything else that followed as a result of the research. But there's three things, and I'll tell people all the time, there's only three things that you have to do. But these are the three things. The first thing is that each of us really needs to be in a good place emotionally, psychologically, psychiatrically. We need to do the work. Even though we can't change history, we need to be prepared to emotionally work through what did and didn't happen in our family of origin. If there was trauma, to be willing to deal with our depression and our anxiety and our substance abuse. And as I used to say to my daughter all the time, the relationship needs to be the icing on the cake. We need to be the cake. And it's really important.
I love that. You be the cake, listeners. And then you're looking for, you got to bake your own cake up first. Oh, that's great.
And people typically, Karen, don't want to do this, okay? Which is why we have a divorce rate for third marriages of 73%. Okay, so this first step, it's hard, and I know that people want to wish and hope and dream that they're just going to find the love of their lives, but this first step is critical, and unless it happens, you're not going to be able to have a successful relationship. So that's number one. Number two, people typically, and it's interesting with all the focus on relationships and mental health and self-help, people really don't know the ingredients that go into a healthy relationship. And there's a learning curve here. We have to be willing, to learn this. And, when I'm interviewed, people will say, so what are the most important ingredients that make or break relationships? And in fact, other than, doing your own work, the two most important ingredients happen to be emotional communication and problem solving. Very unsexy, very unromantic, but absolutely critical. So, there are things that we really do have to.
Will you repeat those two things again? Emotional
communication and problem solving. We have to learn how to have conversations. People don't know how to have conversations with each other. Not personally, not socially, not in our relationships. And it's an art, and we have to be willing. It's like tennis or any other sport. You have to be willing to learn the skills.
And to practice. And it seems that the harder the topic, the more anxiety we have about it, the more resistance, then we turn away from it, and it only makes it worse. That's when you really have to lean in to those
Absolutely.
communication.
And read books, go to workshops, do something. But get yourself in a place where you're in a good place, where you have clarity about the ingredients. And now is my formula. And as I say, I wish I had known this when I started dating, when I was, very, very young. This formula, it's like having me in your purse. Now, the thing that was interesting, and this 10-step formula, you as you're assessing, who this person is and isn't. I mean, it takes you to places where you're looking at your partner's family of origin and skeletons in the closet, and things like substance abuse of various different kinds, and you want to find out about his or her past relationships and what happened. And none of this is romantic, nor do you want to put people on the stand as if they're on a trial. So you have to know how to ask the questions, and you have to listen very carefully. And we want to avoid conflict, at all costs. And that's a real problem, because we need to know. I need to know how you're going to behave if I'm really upset with you, or if there's something that's off, and we need to be able to talk about it. We need to know the difference between emotional intimacy, caring and sharing and love and respect, and physical intimacy. You can have great emotional intimacy and have zero sexual attraction and zero connection sexually. And on the other hand, you can have great sex and great sexual connection and very little, if any, emotional intimacy. And people really need to know the difference between A and between B. We also need to really find out about the person's values and what kind of a lifestyle, and children, and where they want to live, and religion. I mean, there are so many questions that really have to be talked about and discussed, where you have clarity. And, before I did the research, I would meet somebody and I'd say, I met somebody who's really nice, whether it was a woman or a man. I would say, gee, I really met a nice person. I would never make that statement today, ever. So I'll say to people, well, what would I say? Well, what I would say, the best we can all say, is that I've met somebody who appears to be nice. And my research, which was, Karen, I was so upset about this, because in my personal life, I'm one of the most impatient people you're ever going to want to meet. Professionally, it's a different story. The research found, and it was so clear, that it takes about a year to find out who somebody is and isn't using my formula. And you can't fast forward the process. And if you're seeing a lot of red flags, you better get out quickly and not waste, your time and years making excuses, about somebody's bad behavior or incompatible behavior. And at the end of the book, there's 3 questions. Another 3 questions as you go through this 10-step formula. What I want and need in a long-term relationship, what I don't want and need in a long-term relationship. And the 3rd question is, describe the reality of my relationship. And then the fun begins. You have to ask yourself, since the perfect partner doesn't exist, what compromises and trade-offs am I really willing to make? What can I live with? Yeah. You have to be so honest with yourself and with your partner, of course. And whether or not you decide to exit the relationship after going through this process, or it's great and you're going to stay, it's a win either way. It's a win whether you decide to leave or whether you decide, that this is going to be wonderful. And I wish there was a way that we could fast forward all of this, and that people didn't need to do this, because we've never had so many self-help books. We've never had so many podcasts. We've never had so much talk about relationships. And, your listeners need to know about 50% of couples marrying for the first time divorce, 67% of couples marrying for the second time divorce, and 73% of couples marrying for the third time divorce. We've learned nothing. These 3 things will keep you safe. And that's the bottom line. And 3 women are still killed every single day. And I had a very disturbing conversation yesterday. I was having a manicure. I was talking to this young woman who's an MBA student at Columbia, and she said she'd seen me on television. We started to talk. And she started to tell me about her girlfriends who were involved in the hookup culture of just hooking up. And I asked her, I said, how does it work for them? And she said, it doesn't. And I said, well, why do they do it? And she said, she's 27 years old. She was saying because they felt they had to. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, where have we come?
Yeah.
It's girls who educated are feeling that they're going to say yes when they mean no. We must never say yes when we mean no. Zero, and this is another thing that I talk about a lot. There should be zero toxicity in our life, which doesn't mean we don't try to work out conflicts and difficulties.
Yeah.
But, people will say, well, it's only toxic, a little bit of the time. And my response is, a little bit of poison, my friends, will kill you.
That's right.
So we have to aim for zero toxicity. And this is really about, our knowing ourselves. People need to know this. And if they knew this, we would change the trajectory of what's going on in this country when it comes to marriage and divorce and domestic violence.
Yes. Yes. I want to take one of these concepts and some of the research you've done and wrap it around the post-divorce dating world, especially those of us with kids. And you talked about you moved across the continent and this 1-year window, and what's happening in there and kind of what beginning love versus the real love and what we need to know as we choose new partners, but also how those new partners are going to impact our children's world.
Right. It's not simple. And, what's really important, there's so many things that are really important, is that we understand what went wrong in our original marriage. And it's very easy to blame the other person, but we need to understand what our role was. And we danced to dance. Two people themselves danced to dance. And what was our step? What was the step? What did I do that contributed to the problems? I mean, I'm working with a couple right now, and they've been married for 37 years, and her highly educated, very in quotes successful, and she's learned that she just stuffed everything. I mean, he would take over and control whether it was the finances. And up until recently, since we started to work together, she never felt that she could speak up. And she was telling me that in her own family of origin, she was not allowed to speak up. So here she had a repeat performance, really, of what went on when she was a little girl, when she was not allowed. And then she married someone, and it was familiar. She didn't speak up, and he was very much like her parents.
Yes.
And she filed for divorce, and now they're trying to work things out. And it's very interesting. He's having to accept a very different wife who no longer just kind of sits in the background. And, we're hoping that they're going to be able to work things out. But the entire dynamic has changed only recently, since she's the one that discovered, I don't want to do this anymore. I didn't even know I was doing it, but I'm certainly not going to continue to do this.
Good for her. And that family of origin should not be underestimated.
Absolutely. That's where we learn everything. And we have to know what we learn. What did we learn about relationships? What did we learn about marriages? What did we learn about communication? And this is why bandage therapy is a joke, and the consumer really gets scammed if things do not begin, and this is my bias, in the beginning, where people begin to really examine it. This doesn't need to take a million years to do either. Their family of origin beginnings and what they
Yes.
learned and what they didn't learn about relationships and love and money and all kinds of things.
Well, it is that blueprint, and as I've heard you say, it sets the scene for the choices that we're going to make down the road, even when it's unconscious. And the things maybe
Yes.
we didn't like in our family of origin, we end up repeating them because, as you said, they're familiar. So
Yes.
your mantra: acknowledge, address, and resolve to the best of
Yes.
our ability. Tell
Yes.
us a little more about what you mean by that and how we can and really live in that mantra in our own lives.
Well, on my Ask Beatty show on the Progressive Radio Network, I have a segment every week. It's the same segment at the beginning. How am I doing? How are you doing? And I ask people to examine their mental health, their physical health, their sex, their sleep, their money, their career. And we need to be able to do a good self-evaluation to see how are things working? How are things working in our lives? And what things are not working?
Mhm.
Okay. And if things are not working, no need for despair, but we need to be willing. For example, if somebody is suffering from depression and they've exercised and they've taken vitamins and they've done yoga and they've done healing and they've done everything else, and if they're still finding that their depression is not, leaving, their lives, they need to be willing to acknowledge that. They
Okay.
need to be willing to then address and take some, to do something. They've done A, B, C, D. Now we need another sort of path, because whatever it is they've done, it has not been successful, in order to resolve the depression that continues to get in the way of their lives and relationships. So it's not enough to say I'm depressed. It's
Mm.
not enough to say I'm too fat. It's not enough to say I need to exercise. It's
Mm.
about, yes, that's the first point. But now we need to address it. So what do I need to do if I'm going to get myself in better shape? Well, I'm going to have to watch what I'm eating. I need to walk. I need to put my devices down. I need to do,
Mhm.
a little bit more active. Uh, then we're going to get to some resolution. So hoping and dreaming and wishing, it doesn't do the trick.
No.
So we have to put work into, whether it's, finding a great relationship or getting ourselves into good physical shape. And all of this is hard stuff.
Yes, it is. And it's the action part. One of my favorite mentors always used to say, Karen, there's 4 frogs on a log, and 3 of them decide they're going to jump off the log. How many frogs are on the log? Well, still 4, because deciding to do
Right.
something and doing something is
Exactly.
the gap. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that this is where support is just so important. You're stuck. You're stuck. Some of the things that you need to do. And sometimes we just need somebody to take us by the hand and show us the way.
Mm-hmm.
And again, if you're lucky to have family and friends, and if you're not lucky to have family and friends, again, reaching out and asking for help, or going to groups, going to support groups. I mean, that can be something that's really wonderful as well. Where you're in motion, and that you're trying to get on a constructive path rather than remain on a path that is self-defeating, self-destructive, that will never get you where you want to go. But it's
That's right.
recognizing these things, what's working, what's not working, which is why this "How are you doing?" Segment, it really forces people to ask themselves, how am I doing this week?
I think that you make a really strong point, talking today with Beatty Cohan, nationally recognized psychotherapist, sex therapist, and author, and your own radio host. And this idea of support and making sure that we are being our own best student of ourself. Where can people find you? How can we continue to hear from you, Beatty Cohan?
Okay, well, my website is beattycohan.com, and it's BEA TTYCOHAN.com. There's probably too much on the website. There's videos, there's shows, there's television, there's all kinds of things about me. And, best of all, if you want to reach out, you can always email me. And I always respond. And, if people are interested in therapy, we can always discuss that. And what's happened with Zoom, it's just crazy.
Right?
I mean, 90% of the people don't want to come in anymore.
Yeah.
So my practice, which is an international practice, I almost never see anybody in person, and I much prefer seeing people in person.
Yes.
But it
Yes.
is what it is. It is what it is. So
Tell us about the books, the research, the radio show, other ways that people, if they don't get you all to themselves, that we can learn more of your years of practice.
Okay, the Ask Beatty show is live on the Progressive Radio Network from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So every single Monday from 3 to 4 Eastern Standard Time, it's an hour show. I also write 2 columns a month, and I'll tell you something, Karen, this is really the best writing I've ever done. And people are writing and asking questions. You can read my columns, Ask Beatty, at Dan's Papers. So I write for Dan's Papers in the Hamptons and in Palm Beach. So again, if you Google Ask Beatty, all kinds of things are going to come up. The radio show, the column. I'm also an advice columnist for an organization called 3 Tomatoes. So I think that the easiest way to find me is either Ask Beatty or the website, beattycohan.com.
And the book?
The book is on Amazon and all kinds of different places. The book is For Better, for Worse, Forever. Discover the Path to Lasting Love. And it's only for people who are serious about really assessing who's right for you and who's wrong for you before committing to any serious relationship.
Oh, so wonderful. Beatty Cohan, coming to us from the East Coast today. Such a delightful conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your personal story, your been there, done that, other side of divorce, as well as the insights from your long 35 plus years in the world of helping people with their relationships, not only to others, but I would also suggest to themselves. You are a delight.
Thank you so much. This has been wonderful, Karen. Thank you.
And to my listeners, I will remind you, as I do every week, everything will be okay in the end. And if it's not okay, it's not the end.
Thanks for listening. Do you have questions or thoughts about this week's episode? Let us know by following the Good Divorce Coach on Facebook and Instagram at Good Divorce Coach, and leave a comment. And be sure to tune in every Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific or listen anytime wherever you get your podcasts.